All right. Welcome to my live stream episode 274. I'm excited. Um, I'm Joshua Kemble. I've been a graphic designer and cartoonist graphic designer and illustrator for over 20 years. I've been an art director for about 8. I'm actually over 8 now. And when I'm not art directing or doing graphic design and illustration or dad duties, I am basically working on graphic novels like Two Stories in Jacob's Apartment, which I'll play trailers for throughout. I don't really feel like getting into the pitches for those, so I'll just play trailers throughout this stream. But I'd encourage you guys, if you like supporting indie comics, to check out Two Stories and Jacob's Apartment. They're both books I worked really hard on. I think I put half a decade each book. And so if you're out there and you haven't picked up those books, just consider that. It's like 5 years of work each book. I'm really proud of both. They're very like slice of life, autobio indie comic type stuff in the long tradition of indie comics. And so I would encourage you guys to check those out. But I really am actually kind of eager and intimidated to get into this next process on my current book that I'm working on called Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, because we have caught up. So usually I do batches of roughs, and then I'll do final pages based on those roughs once they get approved by my editors at Turner Publishing. And we're on to the next batch of roughs, and I'm actually pretty excited about it. That means the story gets to continue a bit. So for those of you watching the stream who are kind of invested or interested in how the story is progressing so far, this is the fun stuff. This is the thumbnail rough stage where you're taking a script and we're kind of moving from that to an ideated version from the script of just a breakdown, like a basic breakdown of what we're going to show in the story. And it's one of my favorite processes in comics is the thumbnail stage. But it's been a couple weeks since I've done this, and so I'm gonna have to like loosen up and get those sketching skills back in practice. And so we'll see. But I've pulled all the references that I need because the next sequence takes place in the Browning's bedroom. So for those of you who don't know what Not Death But Love is, it's a graphic novel about the Brownings, about Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning. And Elizabeth Barrett Browning, there's this whole untold story about her kind of interest in like seances and like all these weird kind of interesting Victorian era things. And so we've gotten about 76 pages into the story. What I'll probably do is recap it real quick just to get my mindset right for doing the thumbnail for the next page. We're going to be thumbnailing and roughing out page 77. And hopefully this will take about an hour or so, but we'll see. So if you're tuning in, pull up your art chairs and work on some art stuff. But first, before I get into like the sharing of my screen while I work, I'm gonna recap the story thus far. So again, you like the advantage to like watching these live streams too, for those of you who like the process of comics and like comic book stories, is you get to actually kind of see a little sneak peek of the actual story before it's published, which is pretty exciting. And I'm really happy about where it's going. So let's recap it. Let me see if I can properly remember it. And by the way, I've also given this tip to people when you're working on long form projects. Grab this thing here. You should have printouts, right? I basically print out pages as I'm working on them, just to make sure that the sequence flows. So there's like page 1, and then I have it. I don't print them double sided. I just print like one and then the other, and then I flip them so that I can kind of get a rough idea of the page order and what the spreads look like. And I'm kind of doing that as we go along. And so it gives me a little sneak peek of like how the pages are flowing together, how the story is reading so far, and making sure that I'm setting things up correctly for print, so that when we finally get to that final stage, which feels like it's like 10 years from now, but when we finally get there, I can make sure that I've set up all my bleeds properly, that my verso and recto pages are all like faced correctly, and have proper bleeds on them. And also just see a rough idea. It's just an inkjet printer, but if it's not working from my inkjet printer, it's probably not going to work um, offset from a press. So it's always good to color check with physical prints. Generally, there's about like a 10% variation with CMYK files, but this will at least give you a rough idea of like, am I going too dark with the colors? Am I going too light? And that kind of thing, especially if you're working in color, doing test prints during the process, especially on an over 200 page book. I highly recommend it. So there's a little pro tip for you. Okay. Story recap. So we're introduced to the story by seeing Elizabeth Barrett Browning's brother, who's nicknamed Bro, dying at sea in like a yachting accident. It's like they're on a little speedboat, Victorian era, like little skiff. I don't know what that kind of boat is called, but we found one from the era that was most likely the style of boat that they would be on. Actually, what's funny is we found the style of boat they would be on when we were doing research, and it didn't look right. And so we kind of ended up making it like a racing yacht from the Victorian era, because I think the other yachts were just like way too bulky and weird. But anyhow, so they're on. So Elizabeth's brother, Bro, is on a yacht. Kind of in the ocean, traveling around. I'm trying to remember where the location is. Let's see. We're on page 77. Let's back up. I think it's Turquoise. Yeah. Okay. Turquoise, I guess, England. So they're boating around in Turkey, and her brother's boat capsizes at sea. We flash forward to Elizabeth having dreams about this incident. She wakes up. We're given a poem by Elizabeth at this point too, as she's waking up, that addresses Bro's death, and also kind of introduces Elizabeth Barrett Browning in the fact that she's a poet, right? And she's at her family home, in her room, and kind of plagued. You get the picture that from her maid Wilson, that she has been just kind of like destroyed by this incident of losing her brother. And so she has been kind of holed up in her room and taking a lot of laudanum, which is basically opium at the time, which was a common thing that like a lot of people in Victorian England, including Elizabeth Barrett Browning, used. So we're introduced to kind of the dilemma that she's dealing with. And we also get the sense from these scenes that her father is a little overbearing. And then we're introduced to Robert, who is courting Elizabeth, mostly through letters. And Robert visits Elizabeth, and we're kind of introduced to their dilemma because they're interested in getting married. Her father doesn't approve. Because they're from a family with a title, and Robert is way outside of their league in the sense of what kind of he has to offer. And the father disapproves of them getting married. They decide to elope. Oh, we're also introduced to their dog, Wit. I think the dog's name is Wit. It's been a while. This is a big book, guys. Anyhow, so we're introduced to her dog, and we realize she has this like red Cocker Spaniel. So then Robert is courting Elizabeth. Robert shows up at the Brownings' residence and decides that they're going to elope. Wilson kind of concocts the plan. Wilson is the maid, to have Robert basically sneak in at night, and they're going to basically sneak out of the house and get married. So they do this. Robert comes. Wilson gets all her luggage together. They show up at her place, which is like 50 Wimple Street, and they sneak off. They go to a church. They get married in secret, and then they elope. They get on a boat, which was a boat we had to research as well, which was like a steamship from the time, but it's like an early iteration of a steamship that had like I think like a little, like one of those turn wheels, propelling it. They get on this steamship and they have a tumultuous trip from England to Italy, to Robert's residence in Italy. And along this trip, Elizabeth is just plagued with sickness. She's not feeling good. And a lot of it's like the laudanum, and then she doesn't do sea travel well. And especially after her brother died at sea, we realize that she's really plagued by, like just concerns about the ocean, like a massive fear of the ocean. So Wilson's giving her a bunch of laudanum on their trip. She's not feeling great. They finally arrive in Italy at Casa Guidi. And when they arrive at Italy, Elizabeth's health just improves very quickly. Wilson kind of starts changing her costume and taking on more Italian style clothing and speaking Italian and negotiating. She's like, Wilson, their maid, is like in her element in Italy, just like wheeling and dealing in the marketplace. And Elizabeth's mood starts improving, and Robert and Elizabeth really have like a very romantic kind of honeymoon kind of scenario. We're also introduced to Casa Guidi, which is their house, which historically they had in Italy, with like, it has just these stunning views. We're introduced a little bit to some of the things that are happening in Italy at the time. There's a lot of protests for a new government in Italy, and they see some of these protests occurring on the street. You see Elizabeth getting really inspired, and she writes some poetry about some of these protests that she's watching from her window in Casa Guidi. And then from there, we find out that Elizabeth is pregnant. So Robert and Elizabeth kind of have their honeymoon, and then Elizabeth finds out she's pregnant. They have their kid. Her father at this point has completely disowned her for marrying Robert, and she tries writing all these letters to her father to kind of let her father know, hey, you got a grandson on the way, and is dismayed when months later, after the birth of her child, she just gets a stack of letters back. And so let's see here. I'm trying to remember like the whole plot points so far in the story. So Robert surprises Elizabeth and says, you know what, we're going to go to England and we're going to earn the favor of your father. No person in their right mind is going to see their grandson and deny them. And so they go to England to visit family. They meet up with family. They go to a park. We did a really cool page where the park sequence is laid out. So like as you're walking through the panels, you're physically walking through the park, and they have conversations. We find out that her relatives have been kind of advocating for her and with her father, but her father is being very stubborn. And as a result, so they kind of decide, okay, on this plan, they're like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to like babysit your kid at your father's residence, and that way he can meet his grandson. Nobody's going to deny their grandchild. And so then we find out that her father doubles down and like pretty much continues to disown her, and is really pissed at Annabelle, her sister, I believe, for even feigning or daring to bring the kid to Wimpole Street. So dismayed by this, and kind of angry and a little more convicted that like they need to kind of form their own life, they decide to return to Italy. And so they return to Italy, and Elizabeth has a growing interest in seances, and particularly seances by this guy Daniel Douglas Home, who's a kind of spiritualist at the time, who's traveling around to all of these wealthy places in England and having seances and stuff where like the table raises, and there's like a planchette, which is like a like one of those I'm blanking out on what it's called, like a Ouija board from like the Victorian era. And he has like a lot of gimmicks like that. And they attend one of these seances at the Reimer's residence because they're friends with this lady, Mrs. Reimer, who's a wealthy Londoner. And they go to this seance. Elizabeth is very interested from the seance. There's suggestions from home that someone is trying to reach out to Elizabeth during the seance. And meanwhile, Robert kind of witnesses this whole seance and is like, this is kind of stupid. He's skeptical of it. He's like, he just doesn't buy it. And he wants to be able to kind of check out Holmes' stuff to be able to kind of analyze, like, is this even real? Like, seems like a scam. Word kind of gets around to home that Robert's not a fan. Robert ends up, so then we flash forward. Robert's finally finished his great book, one of his great books of poetry, that's released to critical non-acclaim. And he goes to a house of like a painter. I'm blanking out on the painter's name, but it's a painter who existed at the time. And it's like a book reading kind of scenario. And so all these different people are reading their books, reading their poems, that kind of thing. Robert's encouraged to read one of his poems. There's a little exchange between Robert and Daniel Douglas Home, who ends up being at this party. And Home at this party also ends up being introduced to a girl named Sophie, who's a big fan of Elizabeth Barrett Browning and also is equally intrigued with spiritualism and seances and stuff like that. So Home and Sophie kind of start clicking and talking. And Robert has an exchange with Home that's kind of tense and rude, and ends up leaving. So they leave. We move forward in time to Robert kind of is blocked on like writing his next thing. He is instead investing in like a human-sized skeleton called Mr. Bones that he's keeping in their place at Casa Gaidi, and is sort of like having writer's block, but they anyhow. So that's a little further. Then we flash forward to Robert and Elizabeth having guests over. They finally have Mrs. Reimer and Daniel Douglas Home over to their residence at Casa Gaidi. It's a little tense, the exchange between Robert and Home. Robert kind of makes it clear to Home that he doesn't believe what Home is doing. And Home kind of disses Robert's latest book of poems. And Robert kind of takes that as like a last insult, kicks Home out of the residence. And Elizabeth is mortified. Daniel Douglas Home and her friend, Mrs. Reimer, leave the residence very offended. It's like a Victorian showdown. And so Elizabeth and Robert have an argument about it. She's kind of pissed that he would just kind of be so rude to their guests. He's furious that Home is like a charlatan and basically has come into his house and insulted him. So they have a disagreement. Elizabeth storms off. Robert goes onto the patio and looks out into the night sky at Italy, at the Italian landscape, and turns his head back, and the lights of the house go out. So that is where we are currently at. So I think I've fairly well recapped the plot thus far. And that only took like 20 minutes to do. But that gets my headspace right. So let's make some art. So let's go to our daily stream kind of setup. So this is a page. Let's see here. Just filled with, I just have layers of every single reference we're going to need. So there's one thing that's kind of key about this is the location this is going to take place in is in their bedroom in Casa Guidi. Luckily, we actually have photos of their bedroom because it's like a museum now at Casa Guidi in Italy. And so I'm trying to be as historically accurate with this as much as possible. We have her, I have photo reference for her nightgown because this is going to have Elizabeth in it. And she has this kind of Victorian era nightgown that we did research on. I have the view of the windows. That would be the other side of the room, just as a little reference here. And then I have my references for Robert and Elizabeth, and then also for their dog. And I'm sorry, Flush is their dog. Their dog's name is Flush, not Wit. I'm kind of now I'm blanking out, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe Wit was their son. It's been a very dense book, and so like I'm forgetting specific details. But anyhow, so we are pretty much set to kind of work on page 77. We have all of our references. I'll go ahead and show you guys on the live stream that down here, like right below, is the section of the script that I'm working on. And in this case, actually, maybe I should, I'm almost wondering, I'm almost wondering if we should move it up just a little bit so you guys can see the script a little better. So this camera is going to show you me working on, like a fairly affordable little Wacom tablet. And then this is obviously my beautiful visage. And over here is the page that I'm going to be working on. And so the section of the script, we're going to basically go through it. And then from the script, I'll highlight the areas that I'm focusing on in the script. Let me see if I can find that as well so that we can kind of make that a little more useful. So, okay, I'll highlight the areas that I'm working on in the script. And then from there, we'll kind of thumbnail real quick just to kind of break down what exactly this is going to look like. And then from there, we'll work on roughs. So I think what I'll do, just to kind of like bookend this little recap, is play a trailer for Jacob's apartment. And then when I come back, we're going to rock and roll on some roughs. We'll start with thumbnails, and then we'll kind of work our way to roughing out the page. But we're going to read through the script when we do our thumbnails. So with all that being said, if you're still here, here is the trailer for Jacob's apartment. And real quick, if you are watching this or watching this after the fact, I would just ask a quick favor that you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And make sure you hit that bell so that you get notifications when we're about to go live, because I am doing these live streams quite often. I know that later tonight, I'm going to be having an episode of Artcasters, I believe, streamed on my channel. And so you don't want to miss out on that or on the times that I'll be streaming, especially because I stream at really weird hours sometimes. And hey, if you happen to be up and want some entertainment, it won't hurt you to get notifications when this is about to go live. So here we're going to play the trailer for Jacob's apartment. And then after that, we'll get into thumbnailing this page and roughing out the page. That's my goal for this stream. So here we go. right, so that gives you a rough idea of what all that book is about. Of Jacob's Apartment. I'd encourage you guys to purchase that as well as my first book, Two Stories. Let's get into some work now. So, usually what I do on thumbnails is the first thing I'll do, and I recommend you guys do this as well, especially if you're scripting out, which I encourage you to do. Don't make the mistake I made when I was early in comics, where you're not kind of scripting out your stories before you work on your comic. If you try to do a page at a time, you're kind of rolling the dice. And the likelihood that you'll end up with a coherent, good story is pretty slim. So a lot of the trick to comics is just planning and meticulous stubbornness and keeping showing up. But anyhow, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down the script into beats and actions. So the script for page 77, Robert's just been on the man, I am just not digging this like really not digging this okay, there we go. We got a little more space here. And let's reduce the size of this a little bit. Okay. I think everything's all set. we should have everything all set. So let's see here. Okay. So we have the script page, which says tentatively. I don't really need this like side nonsense. I really don't like hold on. Okay, there's page 77. Okay, here we go. I feel like this is really obnoxious the way this this word program or whatever is not very conducive to actually reading. Okay. Tentatively, Robert opens page 77. Tentatively, Robert opens the door to the Brownings' bedroom where Elizabeth sleeps with Flush beside her. So, 1. Robert opens door. Tentative. Bedroom. 2. Elizabeth. I'm going to call this layer notes too. Okay, so 2 is Elizabeth sleeps with Flush. So their dog Flush and Elizabeth are sleeping. He walks quietly beside the bed and stands looking down at his wife. Oh my gosh. So now we have like 3 actions. Some of this is going to have to be condensed. Okay. He walks quietly beside and stands looking to the bedside and stands looking down at his wife. So that's 3 things. So 1, Robert walks quietly doesn't even matter, by his wife. Walks to bedside. I'm just trying to break this down into the simplest actions. Okay, 4, we have to have the action of stands looking at wife. 5, oh my gosh, she opens her eyes. How many actions do we have here? 6, he sits beside her. Oh my gosh, okay. Elizabeth, what time is it? Okay, so there's some Okay, 7 dialogue. 8. Okay, so Elizabeth says, "What time is it? Where have you been?" He says, "Trying to think up a suitable penance." 8. She sits up, takes his hand. We're going to have to condense a lot of this action. Okay, gently. This will be Elizabeth's dialogue. I don't think we want a 10-panel page, so we'll see. Okay, 9. Robert frames her face. In hands. 10. Oh my gosh. They kiss. Okay, guys. I don't want a 10-panel page. As much as I like pages, this feels like a more quiet moment. So we got to kind of think of ways to reduce these. He opens the door to the bedroom and EBB is sleeping with Flush. That could be shown with 1, so that's good. Walks to bedside and stands looking at his wife. I feel like there needs to be a pause there. So I like the idea of him walking to the bedside and standing looking at his wife. I feel like him sitting beside her and her opening her eyes, like I can already see like doing that with her eyes in the foreground opening, with him kind of sitting in the background. So I think we're already kind of condensing this to 2, 3, and 4. This is the boring part of comics, guys. Before we even get into the art, I need to know, what am I going to draw, right? I can't even visually start working it out till I textually understand what I'm trying to communicate. 5 is a dialogue sequence. I do think that needs its own panel. 6 is her sitting up. Okay. And takes his hand. That's already going to be hard to fit. Because I could show 2 actions, but the problem with comics, at least in my opinion, is any action you should kind of show. And I feel like actually her taking his hand is kind of like an important sequence. So this might need to be quite a lot of panels on a page. Because now it's like I've condensed a lot, but now it's like I have to extend for that beat to kind of make sense. Okay, so 7 is going to be her taking his hand. And then it's going to have the dialogue. It'd be great if this all fits in 9 panels. That would be really good. 9, which will now be 8, is Robert framing her face in hands. And this is no diss to Lavender, who wrote this book, but there's a lot of like Robert holding her face. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, am I crazy? I don't feel like I hold my wife's face a lot. Like I don't catch myself like grabbing her face as like a comfort. I mean, I can understand when you're about to kiss someone to do that, but It's just so frequent in this. I can't knock it though. As a writer, there's always go-tos, and I can already tell that's one of her go-tos with romantic scenes is like there's always going to be grabbing her face. I don't know. You tell me, guys, if that seems unusual. To me, that seems a little unusual. Okay. Cool. Okay. I think we have the breakdown. So now what we're going to do is thumbnail this out real quick. And then from there, we'll do our rough, right? And again, it shouldn't take that long. So in theory, okay. So we got our notes. I'm going to make a new page called thumbnails. If I seem a little out of it too, it's because I'm working at an ungodly hour. Okay, so thumbnails. We're going to have, these are just real quick little sketches for me. So the first one's going to be Robert opening the door to the bedroom and Elizabeth sleeping with Flush. This needs to be almost like an establishing shot. Our last panels were wide panels, so I'm almost wondering if it should be a wide one. But I think what I'll do here is maybe this is this first one could be Robert. He's kind of tentatively opening the door. How do you express that? I feel like you'd almost like if you're tentatively opening the door, you might have your arm kind of up there. And then we'll have the arm pulled back opening the door. Maybe his head will be to the side. I think that actually would express more tentativeness. Okay, so his head will be to the side. This is just a real quick doodle, guys. And this is going to be the door handle. And then we're going to have the... I think his hand should be back even more. Okay. So we'll have his arm back even more. Got the door handle kind of open. That's such an awkward way to open a door. And is the door going to open outward or inward is a good question to kind of consider. Okay, you know what? I think I'm actually going backwards about this. The door should be opening. Okay, we're just going to start over. Trying to kind of work this out. So Robert's going to be opening the door. So in this case, maybe he's tentatively opening the door, but maybe the door can be here. Maybe we don't need the hand. And then you have like Robert here. It's so funny that, like, to me, I think that's one of the funnest things about comics is when you're working on sequential work, it's like trying to figure out, okay, how does somebody opening a door in a way where I need them probably on the left side of the panel. There we go. Okay, here's what we'll do. But I also want a clear silhouette here of what the action is. But I also like the idea of the line being kind of more like shoot, one of those, you know? Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay. We're kind of working out the posture here, guys, in stick figure format. Okay. So this is going to be Robert opening the door tentatively. Maybe his other arm can be back a little bit. But I don't want his hand getting cut out of frame. But I also am going to need this to be a much closer picture, so his hand will be cut out of frame. So, okay. So we're going to have that. We're going to have our door. We're going to have just a little bit at the top of the door. And then we're going to have Elizabeth Elizabeth will be here. In the bed. That's kind of a massive distance between him and Elizabeth. So Elizabeth can be here in the bed. Her arms kind of there. And then Flush will be here sleeping, right? And again, this is a thumbnail, not a rough. And let's kind of take a look at the location again, just real quick. Okay, so that'll have a little bit more of our yeah, the bed has like this kind of wacky frame here with there's kind of like a thing there. Okay. And there we go. I like the idea of, I almost want this like following like the rule of thirds or whatever, where she's occupying like a third of the space. And then this being like, I like that as a framing device. Okay, so there's panel 1. So Robert's kind of walking in. He's going to have his, cool beard hair going. Okay, we'll figure that out as we get to roughs. So there we go. That's panel 1. 2 is going to be him walking to the bedside. So I think for 2, we're going to have, should it be next to it? It's going to be a 9-panel page. My goodness. So he's going to be walking to the bedside. So I think here I want to have him by the bedside, like kind of looking down with her sleeping. And the dog's going to be about here. And again, what does this bed look like? I should look at that. Okay, cool. It's got like a thing up here. So, okay, there's the bedside. He'll be kind of looking down at it. I actually like that as a kind of tall framed panel. In fact, I kind of think I want to exaggerate it because I want Robert to feel small. So here's the sequence. And then what does the roof look like? Do we have an image of the roof in the room? This is like the mathy part of comics. This is the boring behind the scenes stuff, guys. Okay. I think, yeah, so there's like a chandelier. That's great. Okay. That chandelier is going to be epic for this. So I think I'll have the chandelier kind of up here. Chandelier. I want to hear Christopher Runciman, friend of the show. I want to hear his cover of Sia's Chandelier. I just think that would be incredible. So Christopher Runciman, if you're still like, if you're watching this after the fact, about an hour into the stream, please on your next live stream do a full-throated cover of Chandelier. Okay. So we have notes here. So 1 and 2 I've taken care of. Now we've got to do 3. Stands looking at wife. So here's the thing that's great. The walking by bedside didn't actually need to happen. Because to me, I'm like, I read 1, 2. I have no problem with this transition. So we've actually gotten rid of one of these. Stands looking at wife. She opens her eyes and he sits beside her. Okay, I think I already had an idea of how that was going to work. So I like the idea of he's on the left, she's on the right. I need to keep that in mind. I like the idea of kind of a close-up here. So we've already got this. So I want this to be her opening her eyes and him sitting on the bed beside her. I like the idea of this being like a close-up of her kind of opening her eyes. We don't need to draw the border yet. So this will be like her hand here because she's sleeping. And actually, I like the idea of maybe even the dog. Maybe the dog's in this frame too. But right now, it's like I'm drawing a sideways face, and it's always better to draw it the way that you can. And I can't remember if her nightgown has sleeves. Yeah, it does, with like frilly things. So she's going to have her frilly nightgown sleeve here. Okay. We're going to do some artsy kind of stuff here. I know this like looks like nonsense, but this is the thumbnailing process. Okay. And I like the idea of Flush being here. Maybe Flush's head is just here sleeping, you know? Like Flush can be like sleeping here with his little nose and his little, he has like crazy big ears. So I like the idea of him kind of sleeping there. Sleeping in frame as well. Flush is really small here. I think the proportions are a little more like this. I also want her eyes a little more like she's just waking up. Okay, cool. So now we have that, like her. We're going to have her pillow or whatever here. And then we're going to have Robert sitting beside her. In theory, I think this will work. Let's just kind of see where we can go with this. So Robert's going to be sitting beside her. Do I want him on the other side of the bed? I do. I kind of want him here. Okay. I'm trying to think of a way to frame this. Okay, I think this needs to be tall. A lot easier to kind of do these things rough. Okay, so he's going to be sitting beside her and looking down at her. So Robert's going to be here. And his head is just going to be turned. Yes, this is the way to do it. Okay. And he's going to be sitting down, kind of beside her. Okay. I think that's actually a pretty good way of framing that. So we have like Robert kind of in the room, sitting beside her. There's still going to be that crazy bedside thing, but I'm liking this like kind of shape too. Okay. So that'll be the next panel. So we're 3 panels in. It's going to be an interesting page. Okay, so we got him sitting beside her and her opening her eyes. The dialogue I need to actually kind of work out here. Oh, okay, I kind of like this. Okay, I like this framing for the next sequence that'll have some dialogue. So I think we're actually going to almost have her like... almost have her like turn her head, but her hand's still going to be here. Her arm's still going to be sort of... This is a thumbnail, you guys. I don't like that though. That was a weak drawing. Okay. Now we're turning her head. There we go. Much better. And she's going to have her kind of nightgown going here. It's not how arms work, too, the way I was sketching that. And then we got Flush. Flush, it might be fun to have like a little bit of animation here, like in the sense of like Flush could still be sleeping, but I kind of like the idea of Flush being kind of... maybe Flush like sits up, because a dog generally is going to be like, the hell, dude. I've definitely had this happen where the wife's been sleeping or something. I come to bed late because I work crazy hours. And then the dog will just be like, what the... He'll wake up and be like, what is this? So this is him doing like the little, huh? And we'll try to avoid tangents too. But the dog can just have like a little moment of like, what is going on here? And it should be the same dog. That would be good. Not a dog that magically gets smaller or bigger. Okay, so that's going to be the dog kind of doing that. And this is going to be her saying, what time is it? Where have you been? The only problem is like his location is going to make the word bubble have to be here. Yep, there we go. I like that. So, okay, then she'll be like, what time is it? Where have you been? And he'll be like, talking about trying to think of a penance or something. I don't like his head getting cut off, though, so we're definitely going to frame this a little bit differently. But if he's sitting down, it's a real big twist. Of his body. I kind of like his... if I have his arms, his hands here, he's kind of like this. Because I'm thinking about like what he's saying. Like he's saying he's trying to think of penance. And so he needs his arms kind of there. And I like acting with hands. That's something I'm really a big fan of. I think we might have to extend the height of these panels too. Trying to think up a suitable penance. Okay. So this is why thumbnails are so good, and roughs are good too. What's great is these, some of these thumbnails I'm going a little tighter than I need to, and that's actually kind of good. So I like the idea of this being like long and tall, because that'll also buy us a little more space for the text. So that can be her saying, "What time is it?" Hold on. Her saying, "Yo, what's the time?" And then he says, "It's time to get ill." And she says, "What time is it?" "It's time to get ill." And then he explains that, like Ma Bell, they've got the ill communication. That was my Beastie Boys reference. How's it going, Paul? How are you doing, Mr. Pate? Mr. Pate of the Paul. Paul of the Pate. How are you doing? What time is it for you? Hope it's not too early. I hope I didn't wake you up. Okay, there's the dialogue. We're almost done with the thumbnail here, guys. Okay, trying to think up a suitable penance. She sits up and takes his hand gently. I think for this, it would be good to have a repeat of that panel above a little bit from that angle. It's just hard to like think of the staging here because he's on a bed, right? She's gonna take his hand. There's a lot of little actions here that like I got to work out. Again, not crazy, but anytime you have like a script, it's always a little bit more challenging to break it down sequentially than you might realize otherwise. So this is going to be him kind of sitting. He's going to be sitting on the bedside, kind of with his arm here. So he's gonna, you know what? I don't like that posture. I want him a little more sad. So, okay, there we go. So it'll be something like that. And then she's gonna be sitting up, and what's she gonna be doing? I think she's gonna be kind of looking to him, but I want her kind of like getting up, like she's not fully sitting up yet. So this is the bed. That's there. You got your dog. Dog's gonna be kind of like, what the flippin' hell is wrong with you guys? Dog's here. Whatever. Um, you guys, this is the best art I've ever done. Okay. So her sitting there. I kind of like her and the dog. I think he's too high up. I want him to be a little larger in frame. I always make this mistake when I'm thumbnailing of like drawing the frame first. I don't need to do that. Okay, let's get rid of that frame nonsense and just kind of make the scene kind of work. Okay, so we're gonna have our bed here. I think Robert can be a little bigger in frame. I like his head being here. And we're gonna have our I want her, she needs to be in a position where she can take his hand gently. Okay. So there we go. And here will be her hand reaching towards his hand. Okay, I think I got it figured out. Okay, so we're going to have this. That's going to be the next panel. Okay. So we got that. She sits up, takes his hand, and says, "Leave that to me," which is kind of awesome because this next panel will make a lot of sense. It's going to be almost like a repeat. Oh, nice. Paul said, "Beastie Boys." Yes. Dee Dee said, "Good morning, guys." Paul said, 6:30, trying to sleep. Be quiet, man. You guys don't realize what I'm drawing right now is Paul and me this morning. I was like, "Hey, Paul." Paul's like, "What are you doing, man? What time is it? Where have you been?" And I'm like trying to think up a suitable penance. And then this whole sequence, this is actually autobiographical on how Paul woke up this morning. Dee Dee said, "Be right back. Coffee." Nice. I might be taking a little break for coffee soon. Too soon. Tune. Blech. It's too early, guys. Paul said, "I like seeing this part of your process. This is the meat and taters of making comics." This is my favorite part. This is where you're doing the thinky work. You're like breaking it down, trying to figure it out. This is the math of comics. This is boring for normies, but for people who are serious about the art form, I think like this is the funnest stuff. The funnest stuff, and funnest isn't even a word. I don't think funnest is a word. Anybody want to look up, Dee Dee, you want to look up the etymology of funnest? I don't think funnest is a word. I think it should be more fun. I think that would be the proper English on that. Okay, so here I want her to actually, like, I really like this because now she can kind of crouch around him and you can have this like real, because this is supposed to be a little romantic, right? And so this will be her taking his hand, and this will make it more spicy because he's gonna like be kind of looking this way, right? So his face is like heading this direction now, and she is right here saying, "Leave that to me." Right? That's much more kind of sweet and romantic. Boom. So that's her arm on his hand. Right? And then the dog's going to be like bored now. Dog's going to be like, "I'm done. I'm out of this business, you crazy humans." Did you know there's a whole book based on the dog of Elizabeth Barrett Browning? There's a whole play, I believe, by Virginia Woolf about the Browning's dog. Flush. Okay, and this is going to be her saying, "Leave that to me," which is very saucy scene, you guys. Saucy. Who ordered extra sauce? Oh, is that this Saturday, Paul? Because I actually took Friday off, and I would be more than happy to kind of meet up with you guys on Saturday. I can try to make that happen because why the hell not? You know what I'm saying? Why the F not, Paul? Where are you guys meeting up? Well, you know what? Maybe we need to have this conversation offline about like where you're meeting and all of that stuff. What exact location will we be at? But yeah, I don't see that being an issue. That should be fun. Am I did you say, Paul, that it's like orange? Anyhow, I'll make it happen, Paul. Message me with the deets of like when you're getting to town and all that fun stuff. Dee Dee was saying, I don't know if it's grammatically correct, but I would try not to use it. Yeah, I think funner is it's just not, it's yucky sounding. It just doesn't sound right. Funner. You guys, it's a funner stream. Okay. But yeah, it'd be super fun to hang out with you and Jim. So, what we should do is find a microbrewery in the area, and that would be awesome too. Okay. Takes his hand. EBB dialogue. Oh, we got that. You guys, we're getting there. We're getting there. Like, oh my glob. You guys watch Adventure Time at all? Or did you guys watch Adventure Time at all? I feel like LSP, Lumpy Space Princess, was one of the best things that ever happened in animation. Nice. Paul said I'll post the coordinates on Facebook. Nice. Dee Dee said, did you see what I said about John Romita? No. What did you say about John Romita? Oh, wait. There we go. Oh, John Romita passed away. Oh, that's sad. That's really sad. Oh, man. Um, yeah, John Romita was a huge influence on my art, as was his son, I believe, John Romita Jr. I think I can't even remember, but I feel like John Romita Jr. was on. Let me look this up. I'm trying to see like if he worked on the run of Spider-Man that I followed. I believe he did. Let's see here. But yes, John Romita was incredible. And yeah, around during my era of obsession with Spider-Man, Romita and his son were both working on runs of Spider-Man when I was younger. Definitely had an influence on my early inking too, because I used to, when I was younger, and this is a pretty common story. It's not like this makes me unique, but a lot of cartoonists, even indie guys like me, you know, um, like I used to take comic book covers that I really dug, and I would literally just redraw them for fun. Like I would look at it and I would copy it entirely, like just draw the whole cover. And I remember, late nights, like 2 a.m, sitting at my kitchen table, growing up, like when I was a kid at the kitchen table, because that was like one area you could have light that like nobody in the house would know you were awake. And I'd have all my crayons and colored pencils out, and I would be trying to mimic the line art of Romita. Romita was one of them because a lot of it was redrawing Spider-Man because that was like my jam when I was younger. Spider-Man was easily my favorite comic, especially in like third to fifth grade. Like, whew, I was obsessed with Spider-Man. Robert frames her face in his hands, and then they kiss. So that's going to be, this one will be Robert framing his face. That's such. Am I crazy? Like, I my Lavender is an incredible writer. Like this book is really cool, but am I crazy for finding it a little strange to frame the face of someone. There's so much of that, like holding Robert and Elizabeth. It's like he like holds her face a lot, and I'm like, is that a thing? Am I crazy? Am I like totally unromantic? I just, to me, that, I don't know. How often are you like holding somebody's face? I mean, I get it before you kiss someone, but it's just like a frequent thing throughout this script, where it's like Robert holds her face, he frames her face. And it's like, man, there's a lot of face holding. Like, it's like a face hugger. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to trash the script, okay? Like, it's a great script. It's just every time it talks about him framing face, I'm like, is this something people do a lot, like more than I realize? Maybe it's like Victorian era. I don't know. Am I crazy? I'd have to ask, like, Paul said, how would you feel if Ben finished the second book of Two Stories? Oh, like if I passed away or something and he finished it? Well, I mean, it's kind of weird because it's such a vulnerable story. It's hard at Ben's age to even think of him reading it, but it would be kind of cool if I actually think it's kind of sweet if like somebody carries on a legacy. You don't want your kid to feel burdened with a legacy. This is the big trick with kissing. Kissing's always weird to draw, and you almost have to kind of have like one head this way and one head this way. That's kind of going to be your best bet to where it doesn't look incredibly wacky. So yeah, I don't know. I'd like the idea of legacy, but I don't like the idea of parents that like force their kids to feel a legacy. But I think if like your kid decides to like, if after I left or this earth or whatever, my son decided to carry on my legacy or whatever, that would be cool. Hopefully I'll finish Two Stories book 2 before that. you know. um Paul said it's a fine line between loving someone and choking them to death. I don't know. I just think it's so weird. Maybe I'm crazy, but just the amount of in this script, like whenever there's a romantic moment, it's like he grabs her face, he holds her face. And once I visually do it, it doesn't actually look as weird as it sounds, but it's like that is one of the things that stood out to me a little bit strange. I'm gonna get like hate mail from my writer now. Not meaning to trash the writer, okay? She's a good writer. She's an incredible writer. This script's better than anything I've ever written. So, testament to the skill of it, but yeah, what's with the holding face, guys? Okay. Our thumbnail is done. Our collective thumbnail. And it is an ungodly hour. I took Friday off. So tomorrow is my Friday, or today is my Friday at work. Took Friday off because I was at that point where if I didn't take vacation, I wouldn't accrue time. And yeah, I want to accrue my vacation time at my job. So I put in a request. I like to do these little, this is my own thing with like a day job. I like to do snuck in like 3-day vacations, like where you just do a Friday here and there. That's like a nice reset. expands your vacations throughout the year, And when you're a cartoonist, it's like, dude, that sounds like a good day off, Stay home, and honestly, Friday I'll probably be streaming most of the day, working on this stuff. Okay, so we have our thumbnail. We're gonna play a trailer. Paul, I don't know if that's what the meaning of that was for you, but with the question, because I think you were talking about like junior and senior, like working on books, that kind of stuff. Unless you meant finished reading 2 stories book 2, and like when he's older, I'd be totally content with that. As a young man, no. Like my son will not read that book for a while. Let's see here. Okay, speaking of, here is the Wordzoid trailer, and I'm going to go get a refill of coffee, and then we're going to take this thumbnail and we're going to do a rough page. Yeah.
Well, Peter, since I'm such a big music fan, I'm going to have to go with Karen Carpenter.
Oh, Stu, I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. Trish, what you got for us?
I'm gonna go with Kim Gordon.
All right, let's check that answer. Kim Gordon. Do we have a Kim Gordon? Yes, and that means you're our new Wordzoid champion, Trish. Dale, tell Trish what she's won. Trish, you've won a copy of 2 stories, a memoir of faith and mental illness. Handwritten, hand-drawn, and handed to you by artist and writer Joshua Kemble. But wait, that's not all. You've also won a copy of Jacob's Apartment, the story of a doomed romance. What happens when you take Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and put it in a blender with Ghost World? You get Jacob's Apartment, written and illustrated by Joshua Kemble. Trish, thank you for playing Wordzoid.
All right, great job, Trish.
I was told I was gonna get a lifetime supply of paper towels.
I always felt bad for John Romita Jr. because he's an incredible artist in his own right, but his father was just so iconic. It's like, it's got to be a heavy thing, Like, I don't know. That's got to be a heavy weight on somebody if you like wanted to do the same career as your dad or something, and your dad had achieved way more than you'll ever achieve. That's a tough one. But at the same time, it's kind of cool. I don't know. It's kind of neat that they share that. I don't know what their relationship was like, but I think that's pretty cool. Like that he looked to his dad. Thing is, though, this is my own take. I wouldn't wish comics on anyone. Hopefully, my son, again, if he wants to do art, I'm going to encourage it. But if he doesn't have the art bug, I'm not going to push that on him because it is a hard life being an artist. It's fun and fulfilling. So if he had the desire or the spark, we'll do everything we can to encourage that. But if he's more interested in like engineering or something, go for it. So it is like, I wonder if there was a bit of concern where it's like, my son is doing what I do and that's cool, but also why comics? I don't know. But anyhow, comics are amazing though. But like I've said on previous posts, they can be a nightmare. Okay, so at this point, what we're going to do is just break out the panels. So this should be fun. This should be super exciting, you guys. Okay, we have our borders pulled from previous panels. Paul was saying, hopefully Ben will grow up to be a quarterback. No, that's another thing, man. Everything I've read about football guys and like their injuries and stuff that follow them for the rest of their lives, a lot of those guys like end up with tons of money and then like end up in poverty with like brain damage for the rest of their lives. No. I will be the opposite of your typical dad. You know, the typical dad who's like, I've made jokes about this, but you know, the typical dad who's like, son, stop doing these girly things like arts and do manly things like sports. I'll be the opposite where I'll be like, you need to stop doing sports and do art like a man. I'm joking, but kind of. Maybe. Am I? Man up and join ballet. That's gonna be me as a dad. No, honestly, whatever my son wants to do, I'll support. He's a pretty incredibly smart kid though, so I have a feeling whatever he does, you know, this could change. Like he's so young, you know. But I have a feeling whatever he does, it's probably gonna be more STEM related. Because he's like incredibly smart. And I know parents will like brag and be like, my son's super smart, but it's like he's like gate STEM smart. Like he's 4 grades ahead in like everything. So yeah, so I don't know. The world's his oyster, assuming, you know, everything goes okay. You know what's a question though? Do you guys like oysters? I feel like when somebody says the world's your oyster, there's like an assumption that you'd like an oyster. I don't know if I'm big on oysters. I feel like oysters are kind of gross. Do you guys like oysters? I don't know. I can't get into them. Like there's just something really salty and disgusting about the whole thing. Is that what people mean when they say the world is your oyster? Are they saying the world is salty and disgusting and you have to choke it down? I'm here all day, guys. I'm here all day. Yeah, yeah. Paul's like, dance like a man. Exactly. It's like Footloose, but the opposite, where it's like, son, I heard you were playing sports like a girl. You need to go to a warehouse and dance your soul out like a man. It's like Footloose, but the opposite, where it's like, Dad, I want to be a quarterback. Real men are quarterbacks. I'm like, real men dance and express themselves and are in touch with their feelings. Yeah, Ben's gonna have a weird childhood. Thank you, Paul. Paul said oysters are gross. I agree. I feel like if the world's my oyster, I'd rather I don't know. At that point, maybe Minecrafting yourself is a good choice. Sorry to any listeners who might like oysters, but I still like how does anybody like those things? They're disgusting. All right, we're doing panel borders, guys, based on our thumbnail. We're breaking it down to oh my gosh. Guys, it's too early. My brain is sleepy. Paul says, doesn't it have something to do with the pearl inside? I don't know. Probably. Does that mean that the world is gonna like bake you and eat a lot of weird, gross sediment at the bottom of the sea. And then at the end of everything, you know, you get an oyster. Or not an oyster, you get a pearl. I'm so tired. You guys. Paul says, I love your redneck dad voice. Thank you. I work on it. I feel like I have a lot of research into that with the area I live in. Yeah. Yeah. That would be funny though. Then my son writes like a tell-all book about his dad discouraging him from doing manly activities. It's like it's the tell-all book about his troubled childhood with his father who encouraged him to not be manly. Lots of scenes like me finding comics that he drew and going, where did you learn this? Where did you pick this up? And he goes, I learned it from watching you. Okay. Interesting times. My poor son. The one thing that he's going to have a difficult time with is he has a nerd for a dad. So he's kind of doomed. His mom and dad are both nerds. He's kind of doomed. But we're cool nerds, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, Vern? Just trying to stick with the redneck thing. Dee Dee said, my favorite redneck is Jeff Foxworthy. I'm trying to think of who my favorite redneck would be. I think it's funny that what's his name? The guy who did like Mater's voice in Cars. Apparently that guy, like when he really talks, is just like, hello there. And then that whole voice of like, well, you're gonna get her done. Like that whole thing is like just an act. Like it's like a shtick. And I heard some comedians talking about it, like that hosted a radio show or something one time, where they said it was so weird having that guy on because like they would have him on and he'd just be like, I'm gonna get my go blah blah. And then the second it goes to commercial break, he'd just be like, well, do you happen to have some tea there? I swear. Oh chaps, could you help a fellow out with some decent tea and crumpets? And then it's like the commercial break would come end and he'd be like, yep, just drinking my drinking my beer and blah blah blah. And then commercial break again, and it's like, well, there, how do you do, sirs? Paul said, comics equal illicit drugs. All right, guys. Powering through it. So, we have our thumbnail. We have our borders. And now I'm going to do this little trick that I like to do, which is I'm going to increase the thumbnail so we don't do twice the work. Something I forget to do sometimes. And then I remember later on because I'm like, why did I forget this? It saves you half the work. Why is that a different color? The heck? What the heckins McGreckins? I dropped this. It's literally a different color. Like, why are you... Are you kidding me here? Okay, select all. That's the first time that's happened. That's madness. Absolute madness. There it is. Okay, now I see why. Because there was a copy underneath it. Jeez. I mean, really, guys. Really. All right. Anyhow, I thought that was funny that guy. I never watched that guy's comedy either. The dude who does like Mater and Cars. But the reason I know of him is because I have a son, and I'm telling you, like Pixar hit like some kind of crazy connection with little boys with that story, because it's like my son was so into cars. This is a cute story, but when my son was like 3 or 4, we went to the LeMay, or I think it's LeMay. It's like a car museum that's out here in LA, and they had a Lightning McQueen car that was like a replica of Lightning McQueen with like his face and everything. And we went to this car museum, and when my son came across that, he was so into cars that he became like I mean, it's like that moment that like somebody just gets freaked out because like the actor that they're the biggest fan of is in the room. He just got like joyful and like freaked out, like excited because it's Lightning McQueen in person, and he was like talking to him, and it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. And he was so connected to that. Like, there's something about that film, that series of movies, where they just like really hit a chord with kids, you know? And I will never take somebody who talks crap about Cars the movie seriously, because I have had a kid and I've seen how that movie connects with kids. Even Cars 2, like all of those movies, you know. A lot of people will make the argument they aren't good movies, but it's like, I think first off, like the production art is incredible in those movies. Um the way like Radiator Springs and like everything in it is like based on actual car stuff. Like the backgrounds are beautiful, the color, um everything about those movies. But also just seeing the way they connected with my kid, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's crazy how like just much he loved that movie. Yeah, Paul said Pixar movies are brilliant. Up is one of my favorites. Up was probably one of, I'd say of every Pixar film, that's my favorite one so far. Um, Anybody who hasn't seen Up, there's like a 5-minute scene or a 10-minute scene in there. I'm sure it's been mentioned a million times now, but the first time I saw that was in the theater when it went through that little 5-minute montage of the couple and them putting the coins away. And I have never cried hard. Like, I physically cried when I saw that. Like, and that's not the first or the last time that I cried in a Pixar movie. It's like the worst thing about Pixar movies is like I know I'm gonna bawl like a child. There's another one they had. I can't even remember the name of that one, but there was one they had about the different like a bunch of the. It's like a little girl growing up, and it's like all her different emotions. If you guys remember the name of that, I think that was called like Inside Out. That was it. Anyhow, there's a scene in that too where like the daughter like gets rid of Silly Island because she's gotten older and more cynical, And when Silly Island collapsed, I was like choked up, like, because I was thinking of my own kid. And I'm like, I don't want Silly Island to go away. That's not right. Telling you, Pixar movies, they touch a chord with me. All right. Paul said, I'm going to get in the car and get a gigantic coffee bomb. Nice. Be careful. Be careful out there, Paul. All right, ladies and gentlemen. We have everything set up to do our roughs. So I'm going to go ahead and play a trailer. And then when we come back, we'll rock these roughs. Let's see. I think I'm going to play a trailer. Okay, here you go.
Hi, my name is Phil Chandler. I'm a freelance artist, illustrator, and cartoonist. Today, though, however, I want to tell you about a graphic novel I picked up recently called Jacob's Apartment. This book was both written and beautifully illustrated by Joshua Kemble. It is the story of a doomed romance that causes the main character to question his beliefs and his faith, while he's also going through other tragedies in his life. Every page has been illustrated by hand and digitally colored with painstaking detail. It is an emotional story that causes you to think and even question things in your own life. And while the story is a tragedy, it is one that I was completely entertained by and I highly recommend. You can currently find this on Amazon or even check in with your local bookstore and see if you can order it. And while you're at it, you can also check out my Instagram at Phil Chandler Arts and also my YouTube channel by the same name, Phil Chandler Arts. And go buy Jacob's Apartment.
And let's just do one more trailer while I get coffee ready. Here we go.
Hi, my name's Chris and I like comics. I want to talk about this comic for a second here. I just got this in. I ordered it direct from my local comic shop through Diamond Distributing. It's Joshua Kemble's Jacob's Apartment. I really enjoyed this book. There's all kinds of comics out there, let's be honest. There's fun comics, there's superhero comics, there's young adult comics, there's adventure comics for kids. There's so many different things under the planet. But there's also an entire subgenre of alternative books. Real life, real world depictions in comic book form. Situations that happen to each and every one of us. And this is a fine example of that. If you get a chance, order this book from your local comic shop. You won't be disappointed. I can't sing its praises high enough. Okay? Check it out. Jacob's Apartment by Joshua Kemble.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get into the meat and bones here. Paul was saying, can't get rid of me that easy, Dee Dee. I'm going to keep YouTube going in the car. Cool. Let us know when you're at the drive-thru, because when you're at the drive-thru, I'll just start making random orders just to confuse the person. So they'll be like, what would you like to order? And I'll be like, I would like a like 5 mocha lattes, grande. And you're like, no, that's just a podcast. And it's like, no, ma'am, do not pay attention to the man in the car. I would like to order the house, everything you have in stock at Starbucks. I would like to order right now. And we'll just have this back and forth in the car. It'll be funny. Okay, here we go. We're gonna pull open our references now and get them all set. So there's Flush, cute little Flush. Just need to know what kind of dog's going to be snuggled up in the bed. Now it's going to be helpful. We're going to have our Robert. That'll be helpful. I'll go ahead and put that over here. We're going to have our Elizabeth. She's going to be sleeping. So that's over here. And then we've got our nightgown, which is going to be very helpful. I'll put that over here. And then we've got, let's find the best angle. I think that's the best angle of the bed there. So we'll have our bed, and that's going to be here. And now we can just draw. And some of that we may not even look at that much. It's just a matter of like having that fresh in the mind whilst drawing. Okay, so let's rough out panel 1. Okay, here we go. And we need to be a little bit loose with it. That's the goal. We don't want to get too tight early on. I think I want to give Robert just a little more height. And I want to have a little more kind of that side of the face kind of thing going. He has that weird beard. We're going to have his hair here. His hair has like a kind of thing going on there. And that ear does not look like an ear. Okay. And I just have... Again, these are roughs, you know, but it's good to have them be relatively tight, not too tight. Okay, and he's got his Victorian collar here. He's going to have his jacket on. And here is where his arm is going to be. His arm will... Let's move our reference down a little bit. Okay, and his arm is just going to be like kind of here to the side. But his arm, never mind, his arm isn't here to the side because it's reaching over. So it's more like that. Here's his hand. His hand is going to be around the door handle. And I think that's kind of good enough. Not the best silhouette, but I think for the framing of the shot, this is really good. Okay. And then we're going to have this door, which I don't believe we've drawn the doorway to the room. But I know the room has like these kind of sort of like border things to them. So we'll give it a little bit of an ornate frame. Okay, so there's Robert. We got that worked out. Dee Dee was saying, do not watch and drive. I agree. I will listen to YouTube videos whilst driving, but I do not tend to watch and drive. That can be a very dangerous... It can be the most dangerous game. Okay. So we're going to have Elizabeth here, keeping an eye on her and her nightgown here. Okay. So Elizabeth is going to be sleeping. And what is she doing here? Okay. Her hair is wild, as usual. Elizabeth has very wild hair. Her hand is going to be somewhat under the pillow. Don't like that expression. Okay, and she has this kind of nightgown on. Nightgown has like a kind of thing here. Her hand will be here. Her pillow is going to be here. And nightgown. She's going to be laying on top of the covers. I feel like for the thing to work, I have to figure that out. Okay, I think I have all of I need of her, so I can turn those off for now. Where's her nightgown? Oh, I drew this on the nightgown layer. This is the danger of drawing at strange hours. Okay. So I like the idea of this, but I kind of want a little more. Let's see here. Okay. I think she should be kind of under the covers. Is this angle even going to work? Okay. So her legs will be here. Her bottom's going to be there. Okay. And we drew the bed just a little too large, honestly. That'll be the way her. Okay, cool. Just kind of blocking it out, figuring it out. She does need covers because nobody's going to go to sleep without covers. It's just nonsense. So this is her sleeping. And then the dog. Let's get that dog reference over here. The dog is going to be here. Do we have that? The dog's going to be sleeping here. It's like a. Okay. And we'll have the covers here, kind of with her pressing covers, dog. Okay. Now let's have the dog gone. Dog gone it. I'm here all night, guys. I forgot the bed has this like kind of frame before it, so we're gonna have to put that in. It has like kind of a sort of frame type thing here. This is the interior frame. Oh wait, that's not where it's gonna go. Let's see here. This is the interior frame. So we kind of have to correct a little bit of our framing here. Let's see how that's coming around. Hey, that's kind of working. And we're going to have our kind of thing here. That's the like this weird Victorian era bed has like one of these things. And we'll have to kind of sketch that real quick. And again, these are roughs, so we're just kind of roughing out. Once I have the rough scene, we'll kind of move from there to establishing a little bit of lighting, and then we'll move on to the next panel. But I mean, the main point here is to just rough out what exactly is going on in the scene and to have like a better vision of like what this is going to all break down to and work out as. Okay, so there's going to be a table here. We're doing it at this kind of strange perspective. That's okay. There's a table here that's going to have this kind of interesting, intricate not so intricate, but there's like a block kind of bottom to that. And then there is another table here that will equally be like over here. So we're going to kind of work that out. That's where this will be. And this is a little bit longer than the other. Actually, they're both about equally long. There's going to be table legs to that. And then there's kind of this like weird ornate stuff behind here that's like these little swirly bops that I'll include. So we'll have that. And then we'll have our filigree kind of top here. That's going to be more just kind of like the filigree ornamentation in the room. And again, this is a rough. That's why there's a dog. I'm here all night, guys. You get it? Because rough. Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I present to you the Kremlinator. The Kremlin does not parse words when it comes to bad jokes. We here at the Kremlin take our jokes very seriously. And by that I mean bad jokes very seriously. Okay, I need to pull a little more reference now of the room. So I'm going to, not this one, this one. Because I want to kind of remember what that dresser looks like. So we have a dresser here. So the dresser is going to be here. Okay, interesting. And the dresser is going to be a little more up than in that picture. And it's a little more towards Robert. So right now we're going to kind of have it alternate a little bit. And this will be that there's kind of this pattern on the dresser that we're going to just indicate. And let's see if we can get that corner. That corner has like a little thing here. I think that's all we needed of that. Oh, actually, we want to see that again. I do want to do that chandelier. And if I don't catch Christopher Runciman's stream tonight or today, someone in chat needs to request that Christopher Runciman sings Chandelier by Sia. Because I really think that song was like made for him to sing. I just want to see Christopher Runciman cover and sing that song. Because I think his voice was made for it. That's what I think. Okay. Christopher, you just joined. I appreciate that. I was just talking about you. I was saying, Christopher, that on your live stream, I want to hear you cover Sia's Chandelier. I think your voice was designed for it. That's what I think, Christopher Runciman. And part of it's because I'm drawing a chandelier, but then I also just had this audio sample of it float through my head, and it was incredible. So that needs to happen. Okay, guys, we are done with roughing out panel 1. The dog was very happy that I said roughing out. Dog that's sleeping on the bed in this scene was like, that's right, you're roughing. We're all roughing. Because it's a dog. You know, I'm kind of sleepy when I'm like, yeah, that's funny because it's a dog. All right, guys, let's see here. We're just kind of blocking in some value so we can kind of establish a little bit of like what the lighting in this room will be like. It's supposed to be kind of at night, so we don't want it well lit. Like kind of a little more mysterious. But we have a rough idea of what we need for this panel. And this, you know, the historical bedroom, so it's like important to kind of at least figure out roughly placement. And the dog is just super happy I keep saying rough. It's like it's like he's a dog himself. I rough all the time too. Oh my gosh, you guys. It's the best joke ever. Nice. Nice. Christopher said you ought to hear me tiptoe through the tulips. At the drive-through line. Okay. So at this point, we have to kind of start messing with Paul. And you guys in chat, let me know what you want us to order for Paul. And hopefully he has the audio going so it starts conflicting with his order. So just say your favorite Starbucks order and make it really expensive and ridiculous. So we can be like, yes, I would like to order a venti mocha latte. I'd like to order a black eye, a red eye, and with 3 espresso shots in it. I'd like 500 cups of coffee, preferably grande cups of coffee. Please add sugar and milk to that order. And let's just continue. Let's have I'd like a wrap, a spinach wrap. Paul, you got to let us know once you're done with the drive-through so we can make this order for you. I'd like 5 spinach wraps. Yes. I'd like to order those upsized. I'd like 27 milks, just plain milks. Do you guys make hamburgers here? Could I, even if you don't, could you make one? Could I custom order a hamburger, please? Let's see. Okay. I think the bit's gone long enough, but hopefully that confused the drive-through. And watch, this is where Paul will reveal that he wasn't at the drive-through. He actually just stopped, went in, and ordered, and this whole bit has been for shame, for nothing. Yeah, Christopher Runciman, my friend, would like a half-cap lemon teased Italianate espresso with a mocha infusion and a drop of mint and ice. 3 pieces only, please, in a small cup. Do you have small? Yes. Paul Pate said $624 is my total. Sorry about that, Paul. The problem with Starbucks though is you can't say large, right? It's always grande or venti. And if you say large at a Starbucks, you tend to get attitude back from the people who work there. Okay, guys, it's getting closer to 5 o'clock. We have finished the rough for 1 panel. We're at about 2 hours on the stream. I'm guessing it'll take about Oh, too long to finish this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and play another trailer, and then I will be right back and we will rock more of this business. Okay, so let's see here. Let's play the fun Christmas trailer for Two Stories. All right, we're back. We're going to work on rough for panel 2. Christopher was saying it looks good, Joshua. Thank you. Okay, let's get into the rough for panel 2. So the panel 2 rough is just Robert here. And Robert is closer to the bed and he's looking down. So we're just going to do a quick gesture of that. His head should be tilted more down. Okay, we're being too tight for roughs. Gotta be nice and loose here, guys. Loosey-goosey. He has an interesting beard thing going on. I'm just drawing real sloppy and loose here, but not loose enough. Okay, start over. Okay, keep it simple. Don't like my eye here. I really don't. What is going on with my drawings today? Okay, let's try this again. There we go. I don't know if you guys ever have those moments of just utter tiredness. We'll see how this goes. I might have to kill the stream at some point soon because I am feeling a little bit sleepy. But I'd like to at least get most of this done, you know? I think that would be cool. There we go. Now we're having a little bit more gesture. That's good. Okay. We're going to do our thumbnail or rough here. Don't like his arm being gigantic like that either. And I like the posture of the thumbnail. I like the idea of his hand being kind of out. And we're going to do a little bit more kind of like this. Nice. Dee Dee said she's heading to the post office. And Christopher said, I have become conscious of when I say bits and bobs now, which I didn't realize I said until you mentioned it. I love bits and bobs. I think it's amazing. Have a great day, Dee Dee. We all appreciate you. Are you streaming today, Dee Dee? Just in case. If you're streaming in the morning, people should definitely be watching Dee Dee stream, especially if you're really into seeing different varieties of ways you can kind of do art. Different approaches, different techniques, different mediums. It's pretty fun. She's very experimental in like a good way, like quite often using all sorts of stuff. Similarly, Christopher Runciman has a really good stream. Yeah, Christopher was asking Paul if he got his order. Hopefully he did. Okay, so we're going to have her sleeping still. I want to make sure she's kind of sleeping in the same way. We have her. She's going to be sleeping here. Again, her arm is here. Hand is here. The foreshortening on this is interesting. Really have to think, okay, we have our cube. Okay, there we go. The dog is going to be here. Again, the pillow here. Got our dog. Kind of want him to be in a different position. I want to make sure I'm utilizing the dog in the different ways that you can do that. So the dog's going to be in kind of a different position here. Okay, and there's the bed sheets. The bed frame is going to be significantly higher. So I've put her way too low on the frame because I mean, realistically, it should be more something like that. This is where it's lovely to kind of work that out. Okay, and now we need to see our bed frame again. Where is our bed frame? Okay. And honestly, we may only get to rough out 2 panels. I was hoping to rough the entire page, but in reality, we may just have time to only rough out the 2 panels. And then I might have to finish this during Artcasters, which will be interesting. We have an Artcasters tonight. It's kind of what I like to call a New Direction reunion tour. Because we're going to have Gary Hodges and Jim Lujan. And we're going to talk about the different stages of a long form project. So we thought it would be a cool topic because all of us are at different points. Like Jim is close to wrapping his big project, being that he is a professional rapper from Brevia. That makes sense. But anyhow, so Jim is at the final stages of a long project. Gary is completed with a long form project. He's done. And then I am midway. And so we thought it would be kind of a fun conversation to kind of compare like what it's like in the different stages of a big project. And since we're all in different stages of a big project, we thought, hey, that'll be cool. We can talk about it. I think that'll be a good thing too, because we can kind of discuss a little bit of Jim's advice to me that he gave that was really helpful. And some of the support he gave recently too, because it can be very daunting being like this early in a process of like, you can get to this point where you're like, I think I've talked about it, but it can feel like you're like in the middle of the ocean. And you're swimming to shore, but it's like you get to a point on a project where it's hard to even see the shore. You're just like swimming and just kind of hoping and trying not to get discouraged, and I think that's the stage I'm at. And it'll be interesting to kind of have that conversation on Artcasters tonight, which will be on my channel. So make sure you guys have subscribed. We're not done yet, because I am going to finish roughing this panel. In all reality, I think like another hour or so, and I would have this page entirely roughed out. But we do not have another hour or so, because I do have a job that I have to go to later today. But anyhow, so I'll probably finish this up during Artcasters. It should be a really good episode. And then, of course, Gary recently wrapped one of his best, I'd say probably his best work. The latest Dinosaurs versus Mars bots. And so he's kind of at this point of like promoting and finished, like at a finished stage of like a big project that he took on. So it'll be interesting to kind of compare everybody's experiences and what advice and stuff we have coming from the standpoint of different phases of the project. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. As Dee Dee has pointed out, I guess John Romita Jr. or Ramada Jr. has passed away. Not Junior, sorry, Senior. He was actually one of the first artists I met at a convention a long time ago. When I was pretty young, and I believe if I dig through my long boxes, I think I might even have a sketch he did of Spider-Man for me as like a young junior high kid. So kind of a legend. Definitely developed and shaped the look of Spider-Man quite a bit. Okay, so we're gonna do just the bare bones here of this, and then we'll kind of move on and finish this up as the day progresses, like probably during Artcasters tonight, which is kind of a bummer. This is a downside of having a day job, is you kind of make the time you can for comics, and then you cannot always have the time that you need. But I'm happy with how it's coming. And we'll just add a little bit of shadowing. And I think the more complicated panels have all been done. So most of it's character work after this. It's just like establishing and blocking out what that room is going to look like. The room where it happened. And just establishing the acting, the shading, all of that. So this is part of my weird process, guys. I do feel like, hey, we got a couple hours of comicking in, and that'll be good. If you guys are looking for comic content, comic related content, Make sure you check out Dee Dee Willingham's stream. Make sure you check out Christopher Runciman. I believe he'll be streaming later today. Usually, in my time, it's like 11 Pacific. I really enjoy his streams. And make sure you check out Artcasters tonight at 9 p.m. Pacific, where we'll have Jim Lujan and Gary Hodges, and then Corey Kerr and Scott Zirkland and myself to talk about long-form projects. Okay, that's as far as we get. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it, but we have finished the first two panels, roughs of these, which I think is actually pretty good progress. And of course, roughs are going to take me a little longer when it's been a while. Yeah, Christopher was saying butterfly stroke, Josh, all the way. Thank you. He said, I think I'm working on a long-form project. It feels daunting. I sneak up on it like Scooby-Doo character and shout, haha, as I jump in my chair. Then I get working on the next page. Yeah, I think like you just kind of have to just keep at it and carving away with the faith that it will get done. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me and tuning into this stream. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit that bell so you get notifications. Like for instance, tonight when Artcasters happens, you want to be there. And I will see you guys on the next live stream where we will finish up this this panel or this page. And then what's interesting is it sounds like me and Paul and Jim might meet up this weekend, which is kind of exciting. So I'll try to maybe do a live stream or something from there. That'd be fun. All right. Christopher said, have a great day, Josh. See you later. Yeah, have a great day, you guys. I will see you guys on the next live stream. Goodbye.